Adult animated comedy shows have not had the best reputation as of late. Sure, shows like The Simpsons and South Park have been going strong for long periods of time, but in much more recent years, they've lost their peak quality in the eyes of the public. And The Simpsons and South Park are not the only adult shows to be perceived as losing their quality. Seth MacFarlane's shows have been said to have been losing their quality as well. Of course, you have the shows that still keep things fresh in many ways, with the likes of Robot Chicken, BoJack Horseman, and Archer, to my knowledge. But apart from them, the vast majority of adult animated comedy shows, it's just complete utter slop, to be honest. Because a lot of adult animated comedy shows make the fatal mistake of being juvenile just for the sake of being juvenile, thus coming across as extremely immature and cringeworthy. And not to mention, at times they teach contradictory morals that could lead to outright nihilism at times, which has immensely backfired on the respective fan bases. Looking at You, Has Been Hotel, and Hell of a Boss, and Rick and Morty. But then you have this proper breath of fresh air for adult animated comedy shows. In this case, it's Smiling Friends, this collaboration between YouTubers Zach and Michael alongside Adult Swim. It's one of those cases where the stars have aligned and so on and so forth just to make this happen. In the palm of my hands. It's that beautiful creative balance where Zach and Michael push themselves out of their YouTube comfort zone to work in a professional environment, whilst Adult Swim trusts Zach and Michael with enough creative freedom to make something that legitimately work. And legitimately work, this show did. Smiling Friends has got to be one of the most beloved shows in recent history, and guess what? It has a fan base that has responded likewise, in that it's not toxic. So what is Smiling Friends all about? I'll tell you. Smiling Friends focuses on the mayhem-inducing misadventures of the work members of the titular charity, as they are hired by Mr.Boss, yes, that is literally his name, to go around to various clients to make them smile. That's the basic premise. Whilst the show does have somewhat of an ongoing story, it is mostly portrayed in an episodic basis, so anyone should be able to jump into the show at any particular point and understand what's going on. The members of Smiling Friends consist of Charlie, who is laid back yet can be quite lazy, Pim, who is the heart and soul of the team, yet can get carried away.
This is gonna be great, Charlie. I love helping kids. I love kids, Charlie. I love kids!
Pim, I would really not be screaming that at the top of your lungs.
Alan Red, who is the low energy member of the group.
Did you take a paper clip?
Essentially Squidward if he wasn't so easily ticked off. And Glep, who is a very important member of the group. Wouldn't you say so, Glep? Profound music to my ears. And then, of course, there's Mr.Boss, who also has his own contributions, not just in giving out tasks for the day, but also helping people out in rather unusual ways.
What's all the commotion out here, boys?
There's an extended cast of characters that come and go, but that's basically the main set of characters that you need to know getting into the show. What makes this show so refreshing is that it is predominantly optimistic in its outlook, and yet still makes room for surprisingly hilarious shock humor. Yes, you can have an optimistic tone and still have shock humor. That's what this show proves. In fact, it's so optimistic that in many unusual ways, it actually critiques the moral degeneracy and nihilism that I mentioned earlier, probably in an indirect manner, but still critiquing it nonetheless. For example, there's this one episode where a rival group comes along, trying to encourage nihilism among the masses, but the moment one of them gets threatened in public, he starts begging for his life, at which point the public starts to realize, hang on, wait a minute. If you really were consistent with your nihilism, then why are you begging for your life? It's as if people actually do, on a subconscious basis, know that they have innate worth. It's just that nihilism isn't the answer. I find that very fascinating. And the show keeps going with all kinds of creative ways to make clients smile, and it's very uplifting as well as very shocking. It's very mayhem ensuing, and it's all the more mayhem ensuing in the fact that there's multiple animation styles at play. Whilst you could distinguish the overall aesthetic of Smiling Friends compared to other shows, there's not really a strict character design rule in Smiling Friends. Because one moment people are animated and designed with the 2D aesthetics, next moment you have some other characters who are stop motion animated, and then other times you'll have other YouTube animators collaborate with their own bizarre mishmash of different styles. You'll even get some live action appearances in there. And what I really love about this show is that every single frame of this show is catered to make you laugh in some way. It's not just what's appearing right in front of you, it's also just what's going on in the background with several gags that you might not have even noticed, like this one random camouflage guy who just runs at supersonic speed in the background, or other characters who just run at supersonic speed, or just the sheer inconsistency, the deliberate inconsistency, mind you, of certain character designs. Like, for example, one moment a character will have a realistic number of 5 fingers, but then the next moment they'll revert back to 4 fingers. You know, it's like SpongeBob SquarePants, where they get autistically detailed just for the sake of selling this particular gag. But then the next moment they'll just overly simplify something for the sake of another gag. Sometimes the animation is hilariously basic. My main example being when Pim and Charlie meet Desmond's mum. She has this way of walking where her feet go really fast, like tipper tapper, tipper tapper, tipper tapper, tipper tapper, tipper tapper, tipper tapper. That visual gag is really funny to see. But then the next moment you'll have other characters who are elaborately animated just for the sake of selling another kind of gag. Like, for example, there's an episode where Charlie and Pim go on a fantasy quest to try to make this princess smile, and I kid you not, they come across a character who is pretty much a blatant plagiarism of a Rankin Bass Hobbit character. Like, I kid you not! They're not even trying to hide it! It's a blatant plagiarism of a Hobbit character animated by Rankin Bass. It looks exactly and is animated to replicate the Rankin Bass Hobbit, if not animated somewhat smoother due to recent technology. Like, they're not even trying to make it a different character design. It's just the same character design, but obviously with a different character. You know, it's that kind of offbeat humor. I could go on and on about how some characters phrase certain words in such manners that are not usually phrased by the majority of people.
You'll get lost! Spread out revenge for the PS2.
Or some reoccurring gags and stuff like that, but needless to say, it's absolutely refreshing to have an adult-oriented animated comedy show that doesn't primarily rely on juvenile stuff and swearing and stuff like that in order to have absolutely hilarious humor. I mean, they do have some censored swearing and other stuff like that, but it's used sparingly. And that's a thing I've noticed about when you're trying to depict something shocking, and this can apply to whether you're being comedic or trying to be serious. If you overload your audience with something that's meant to be absolutely shocking, they'll get numb to it, you know. It's like if someone were to play something like, say, Mortal Kombat, but then I don't know, the game would try to present one particular scene as absolutely shocking. Well, you just showed me blood and guts and gore all over the place. What makes this stand out above the rest? But with stuff like Samurai Jack, for example, that uses blood rather sparingly. So when it does appear, you legitimately go, oh! That same kind of mentality applies to Smiling Friends, but obviously on a much more comedic basis. And what makes the show even more refreshing is that even though the show is not taking itself seriously at all, there is a genuine heart to the show in the fact that there's this underlying motivation to try to make people happy. And I really like that attitude that the show brings out. If I did have some criticisms for Smiling Friends as a show, the show does thrive on being rather fast-paced, but at times it can be a bit too fast-paced in the fact that episodes will begin, but then they'll just end and you're just wanting more. I suppose, to be fair, Smiling Friends does have the strength of not meandering around some needless fluff and just getting straight to the good stuff. I suppose it could have gone the route of a majority of other shows out there like Animaniacs, Looney Tunes, or Phineas and Ferb, where they have the 2 15-minute episodes into 1 half-hour session. I mean, this complaint of mine doesn't necessarily ruin the show, but it is something to keep in mind. Episodes will happen, but then they'll just kind of end before you know it. But fortunately, they last long enough to leave an impression to make you laugh. Overall, this is a brilliant show about this group of people who go on various misadventures and make people smile, whether directly or not. You're guaranteed to have a fun time, which is why I rate the Smiling Friends series, at least as far as what I've seen of season 1 and 2 is concerned, an 11.2 out of 12. It is absolutely hilarious, absolutely refreshing, and an absolute good time. Yeah, there might be a few other elements that can be a bit bonkers in hindsight. Again, the show's not really taking itself that seriously, and every facet of the show at the end is catered to make you smile and laugh in some way or another. So yeah, absolutely fun time. What do you think of Smiling Friends? Is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to bring up? Bring it up in the comments below, and I look forward to watching season 3 of Smiling Friends. And I'll make a review of Smiling Friends season 3 when I finish watching that. Stick around for that, and thank you so much for watching. ScotsThinker signing out. What the heck? How did I do that? And let's begin by being bluntly honest about the state of a certain branch of shows. Car, you are interrupting my focus.